Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Loreweek. I'm your host, the Lore Dude. Wait, the Lore guy? I don't know, whatever. Lore Bob. Oh god, now I gotta introduce a character named Lore Bob at some point in time. In one of my stories. Stupid Dust. Go away, Dust. Nobody likes you. How are things? So, I don't have the music crawl here, because I don't think I need to today. I figured, given the topic of the stream we're going to do immediately following Loreweek, there's no real reason to do that. No, we're not doing the Elder Scrolls lore run today. God, no. God, no. I just finished the STO lore run yesterday. Christ, dude. Oh my god. No. No. You're trying to kill me? You're trying to kill me. I knew it. Ah! Guys, he's trying to kill me. Neverwinter Nights lore run isn't even something I'm thinking about right now, to be completely honest. No, please don't kill me. Please. Actually, you know what? At this point, I'd be okay with you killing me. I could use the rest. Sorry, I'm just watching my screen here instead of the camera like I usually do. Because I'm doing something to try and make this background work on VLC, and I don't know if it's going to work. You guys, do me a favor and help me out with this. If you see any gray blips in this background, say something, because I'm trying to fix that. It's because of the frame rate. This is a 30 frame rate, actually a 29.94 frame rate file, and VLC doesn't seem to know what to do with that, so I'm hoping this will fix it. No, don't let me live. Please kill me. I'm begging you. God, please. Do you guys know there are actual talks that are actually going on between actual executives and actual writers and actual studios to actually make a Duke Nukem movie that they want John Cena to play in? I don't even know what to say about that. Oh my gosh. I mean... Okay. I don't even know what to, I really don't even know what to make of that. It's just... And his name is Duke Nukem! Da, 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 da. Anyways, I got nothing. The only movie I know John Cena was in was a movie that I really didn't care for. Which, I can't remember the name of it. It's one where Mark Wahlberg and I don't remember the other guy are like competing for being the best dad and trying to, you know, claim the love of this one woman and blah blah blah. And then right at the end, John Cena shows up and he's like dun 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 as the other dad. I seriously can't remember the name of that movie. Hang on, I gotta look this up. Give me a second. It's gonna bug me. Hang on. I'll just look up John Cena. That should be easy enough. God. Well, clearly John Cena is filled with... I mean, that just makes sense, right? Who was that? I didn't even see. It was Sigma! Thank you very, very much, Sigma, for your continued support. Those are still very, very well liked and very appreciated. Thank you. Yeah, it is Daddy's Home. That is, in fact, the movie. I finally found it. He's also going to appear in Bumblebee the movie. Fear? Who was that? That was Micromano. Damn it, Micromano. Well, thank you very, very much. Again, that support is still very helpful and very appreciated. Thank you, sir. Good, Takoida. Also, what are you linking me tied to? I don't get it. Amazon, yeah, it's exactly like Hitman Go. You play as Amazon, and you have to assassinate other companies. It was last week or 2 weeks. No, it had to have been 2 weeks ago, Barman. Because last week was the brief one, because we were doing the STLR one. So I think it was 2 weeks ago when I said there was no Dragon Age game in development, in my opinion. What's funny is my opinion hasn't quite changed on that, but that is a topic we're talking about today. Yes, Google's the final boss. And Google literally has infinite HP. Ow. I know, a Bumblebee movie. Why? Okay. I can only imagine that the Transformers films sell really well. I have to say that because I haven't paid attention to Transformers sell numbers since the third film. But I have to imagine that the Transformers films sell really well, because I can't imagine the studios would be willing to go ahead and fund a frickin' Gaiden film about the Transformers film. Bumblebee is getting his own film. Is this reality? Is this just fantasy? Sorry, just wow. Oh, by the way, you guys would be amused at what copy-wrong stuff has been happening on the STLR one, which I finished uploading last night. Don't worry, nothing's actually been muted or blocked or anything like that. It's just people claiming ad revenue. Some of it I expected, because, you know, I played the Delfino Music Plaza theme. And because of the fact that I played like 20 seconds of Delfino Plaza's music, clearly Nintendo owns all 9 hours of film. I mean, that's just duh, right? That's just logic. But in addition to that, look, I love Nintendo, but I also hate Nintendo. They're not getting off the hook on this. But in addition to that, I've had 4 separate companies try to claim some of the music on some of them, including when I played Adagio for Strings when the Iconian Preserver thing happened. And 7 separate companies are all claiming copyright, you know, ownership and ad revenue on Adagio for Strings. I mean, do I even need to go into it? Yeah, you know what? That's true, Hazardous. Nintendo Inc. Nintendo Corporate. Alright, let's update the topic. Let's talk about Amazon. I mean, it's possible someone owns Adagio for Strings. I figured it was old enough now to be public domain, but what the hell do I know? Let me get my timestamp, which is 8. Let's talk about Amazon Go. Now, I'm talking about this for a weird reason. Let's be honest with each other for a second. Amazon is the new Google, and they have been for a while. Now, if you don't quite understand what I mean by that, let me take a really, really, really long 7-mile step back. And Google used to be run and owned... By the way, how's the audio volume? Sorry to interrupt myself here really quick. I have heard nothing about that, Hazardous. I have no idea what you're talking about. You're talking gibberish to me. I'd say you're taking Greek to me, but you're not. Anyways, so 7-mile step back. Google used to be owned by a couple of people whose main purpose in life was to try and be a large corporation that would try to actually better the world around them while still making money. Now, that may sound like a weird statement, but this is, by all accounts, true. At the upper levels of leadership, that used to be what Google was about. Then, at some point in time, I forget when exactly, forgive me, the people who were in charge of Google retired because they'd made their fortune and they were done. Then Google started doing other things. Now, for those of you not aware, Google is in charge of YouTube, and as I've said a few dozen times, the direction they've been taking YouTube has been wrong. Just like in every way. And I mean that sincerely, even from a purely economic perspective, even if we ignore morality or decency or right or wrong or anything like that, even if we're just looking at things as numbers and money, they're still treating YouTube wrong. Never mind all the other crap that's been going on. Let's not even get into that. And that pretty much, you could pretty much point to the exact moment that those top executives and presidents were retired and said, all right, we're done, as the moment which Google started going, whoo. Meanwhile, Amazon has been going out of its way to basically become this huge mega corporation in many different fields in many different ways, and doing so in a way that's generally designed to better the lives of people around it rather than being evil. Amazon, by contrast, has Twitch, and as much as we all make fun of Twitch, I will say, especially from personal experience as a streamer, Twitch has gotten universally better ever since Amazon took over. And Amazon's customer service and Amazon's general presentation has been through the roof. Amazon has been willing to go to bat in several cases for just basic customers. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but Amazon has basically just decided to take the spot of the good company, and I hate to put it that way. Now, of course, we're probably going to have the same thing happen with Amazon in a few years when they retire, but, you know, whatever. At least for now, it's good. Why am I bringing this up with regards to Amazon Go? Let's talk about what Amazon Go is, because Amazon Go is a new grocery store that they finally opened just last week in Seattle, Washington. Now, yeah, no kidding, Hot Wings. Yeah, that's true. The Amazon has actually been doing some really good stuff with integration of services lately, too. Yeah, let's not even get into that. Freaking YouTube. Anyways, Amazon Go it's a grocery store. Here's how this works. I got my phone, right? It's got my Amazon Prime account logged into it. I go up, I badge myself in. There's a way to open up a thing where I can, you know, show the barcode, or I can just plug in whatever. I am now logged into the grocery store. I then go around, pick up whatever I want, put it into my cart, put it in my bags, and then I leave. Done. When I cross the threshold leaving, that's when I'm charged for whatever I picked up. I have no idea max time. I'm an affiliate. You should have stream quality options. Does anyone else have stream quality options? Like, that's one of the benefits of being an affiliate, is I have quality options. It's actually one of the biggest things I wanted from being an affiliate. The subs was an unintended thing. I never expected that to be a decent income thing. So, let's talk a little bit about the reality of this. The way this system works is they have a number of things, including weight option. They have scales on... It's weird that we're having inconsistent quality options. I have no idea next time. What's up with that? I got nothing. There are weights on all of the shelves, and there are tons and tons of cameras which use pattern recognition to try and differentiate between one product and another, and they're all, you know, moving around and trying to basically scan exactly what you're bringing in and how you're bringing it in and blah blah blah. Now, this is interesting to me because this isn't like Aldi's. Aldi's, I have to actually talk about this because apparently not everyone knows what Aldi's is. Aldi's is a grocery store that basically chops overhead down to a minimum so they can afford to sell food at a fairly low price. There's issues with that, Carbon. I'll get to that in a second. We'll talk about the functionality in a moment here. But Aldi's, you know, is a different type of grocery store. If you've never been to an Aldi's, it's like this. You go in, you either have to carry everything in your arms, there's no bags, there's no nothing, or you have to actually rent a shopping cart. Now, you get your money back when you return the shopping cart, assuming you do return your shopping cart. But there you go. So you go rent the shopping cart. You go in, you toss all the stuff in there. There's one person in one aisle scanning stuff through. You pay, and then you leave. Now, that sounds like a normal grocery store, but if you've seen the inside of Aldi's, and I'm going to fail at describing it, you'll know why it's different. It's literally just, here's like some tables with food on them. Here's the fridge section with food on it. Here's the freezer section with food on it. That's it. It's just one large warehouse, basically. In other words, there's no advertising. There's no big displays. You know what I mean. I just went grocery shopping yesterday after the low run, and there was this big old thing where they built, I'm sure some of you have seen this before, where they have literally, like, they've made patterns of the, like, the Pepsi and the Coke boxes to make a thing for some big game that's coming up, right? And they don't do that. Aldi's doesn't do that. They do nothing. They put food out, and they have a person running this register, and that's basically it. As a consequence, all the food is a lot cheaper because they chopped their overhead down. For those of you, I'm sorry, I should explain this, I just realized. For those of you who don't know what overhead means, overhead is everything involved in a business that does not directly affect the product. Now, overhead's a good thing, especially if you use it right, and overhead is a major aspect of almost every economic model in the world. But overhead is hiring more people in order to, do the setup, hiring more people to run security, hiring people for security cameras, paying for the security cameras itself, the additional charge of spending money on marketing and whatnot. All that stuff would qualify as overhead because none of that is directly affecting the actual product, in this case, getting food to you. And this is basically what the Aldi's model is. Now, why am I bringing it up with regard to Amazon Go? Because the Aldi's model makes a degree of sense. It is very basic. It's actually just literally flat third-grade arithmetic. Chop down expenses, lower prices. And Aldi's does a lot of business. What Amazon Go is doing isn't that. In fact, from a purely economic perspective, I actually think Amazon Go, and I don't have hard facts on this, let me make that clear, so this is speculation, but I don't think Amazon Go is going to be in the black for Amazon. I think it's going to be in the red. I think they're going to operate at a loss to make this happen. But why do that? Now, this is getting into theory crafting at this point in time, but it is my opinion that Amazon is basically the new Google. Or, to use a term that will probably make more sense to a lot of you guys, they're the Nintendo right now of that particular industry. They're trying stuff because they can. Because they can afford to. Because they can eat that loss in order to try and do this. In order to try to spread the Amazon brand around and basically eat up another market. Amazon's already made several attempts over the last 2 years to try and get into the actual Whole Foods market, because they kind of aren't right now, despite the Whole Foods. Funnily enough, they purchased a company called Whole Foods, but what I mean is they're trying to buy into the grocery market, let's call it that. And this will be a huge measure in that in that direction, if it works. Now, here's the really strange thing. You might expect that I'm telling you about Amazon Go because it's this new thing they're trying. They actually implemented Amazon Go over a year ago. They have been actively testing Amazon Go for the last year, consistently refining the camera process, refining the weight system, and refining the actual detection of the individuals for a year. The reason I'm bringing it up now is they opened it up to the public last week. As in, it's going out. If I went to visit my aunt who lives just north of Seattle, or a friend of mine who lives a ways east of Seattle, I could go to Amazon Go right now and be like, boop, and just go shopping. It's in the public now. This is just interesting to me that there's a company that's still actually trying to push the envelope. Someone in chat said, throwing stuff at the wall and seeing what sticks. I'm with this, in all honesty. I know that sounds weird. This is the Concord thing all over again. I have to look at a company that's actually trying new things, not just because they're economically feasible, but because they want to try new things to push the boundaries. And I don't know, the weirdo in me has to celebrate that idea. has to say, yes, God, yes, try things, experiment, stretch out, don't just make, I mean, because Amazon could have just made a grocery store. They could have just been, bam, here's a grocery store, and it's just like any other grocery store, and they could have done that, and it probably would have made money. But nope. It's this weird thing. So, okay, let's talk about the reality of why this is beneficial. Let me give you a personal experience from yesterday from when I went to the grocery store. I went to the local grocery store. Yeah, exactly, Nintendo and Amazon. I don't know about Facebook, but I know Nintendo does that. No. Okay, so it is a physical retailer. You actually go to the grocery store. You go to the Amazon Go, okay? Once you're there, you log in at the entrance. And there's only one entrance and only one exit, okay? It's pretty contained. So you log in, and, all right, let's see. I need to grab this, and I need to grab this, and I need to grab this. And then I leave, having basically bagged my own stuff, because, you know, they give you the bags. And then I just leave and go out to my car. By contrast, what actually happened to me last night, and keep in mind it wasn't exactly a busy night at the grocery store, was I went and got my all things, and then I went up to the line. There were 3 people ahead of me in the line. There was 1 line open, so I'm just hanging out here. I waited for a little over a minute, which isn't a long period of time, admittedly, before they, you know, they shut down the line, and we all had to shuffle back and move over to the other line. So like, oh, okay. I have not heard anything about that, no Ventures. Although the idea of calling it racist for people who don't have smartphones and checking out is stupid, but I'm not going to get into that. So I'm over in the second line now, and I got to listen to 3 songs, however much time that is, because I always got my music going when I'm out and about. And then it finally got to the point where I was now at the pay place, so I could get all my stuff out of my grocery cart, put it on the conveyor belt. There we go. Okay. Waited for her to check me through. Now, I did get her laughing. This may surprise you guys. I'm a bit of an extrovert. And the woman who was running the register didn't look like she was having a good day. So I started joking with her and tried to get her to laugh. I did actually get her laughing and got her in a better mood when I left. So that was good. Then, having waited quite a bit of time now, it's like, okay, fine. I got to get everything. She has to scan everything through. I have to put everything in here. Put them back in the grocery cart. And then I can leave. Now, that wasn't too bad. But the point is, even at my local grocery store, which had maybe like 10 people in the queue overall, that still was like a 7 to 8 minute trip of just waiting there doing nothing. If I went to my local Walmart, which I did like 3 weeks ago at this point, something like that, it's much, much worse. Because, I don't know about you guys, but every time I've been to a Walmart for the last 2 years at this point, there were, I don't know, 20, 25 lanes, one of which was open. So obviously I did what most people went. I went to the self-checkout. The self-checkout, this is not a joke, okay? I want you to picture this. This is the self-checkout area. So there's 4 checkout things here and 4 checkout things here, okay? So here's the checkout things. We're going to put these over here. And then here's the actual aisle, you know, like that people walk down to get into the lanes. And then here's like the grocery section and here's the clothing section, okay? And this, I'm actually mapping this out. So here's this. The line for the self-checkout went past the aisle, past the clothing section, and into the pharmaceutical section, which I'm actually off camera here now. But there was 1 lane open other than that. And to be blunt, this was not an isolated incident. This was not in like a big, you know, oh my god, we need to hurry up. No. This was normal. This is very normal for my local Walmart. Again, for the last couple of years, this has been normal for this Walmart. So for people who are tired of that, Amazon Go is going to be like, oh, thank God. I guarantee you that there are people who, even if it costs more, which I don't know about the relative price change, but even if it did cost more, I guarantee you people would be like, screw that mess, who would prefer to go to Amazon Go and go through that instead. So that's the base. So I forget who asked, forgive me, but someone was asking, what's the benefit of this? That's basically the benefit. You don't have to deal with any of that crap. And here's the thing. There's one other thing here. I'm an extrovert. I like talking to people. But not everyone is an extrovert. And not everyone likes talking to people. And not everyone knows how to talk to people. Even people who know how to talk to people sometimes get hesitant at talking to people. So there's plenty of people, I guarantee, because I know several myself, who would prefer to not interact with a human being while doing their grocery shopping experience. Especially since there are plenty of stores where the people who are working there don't have the best attitude, or come across as surly or aggravated, or don't even talk to you. You know, they just say, start scanning. 35, 32. Debit or credit. Right? And to be clear, I'm not blaming those people. I've worked retail. I know how much that job sucks. We'll see where they go with this. According to several people at Amazon, now that Amazon Go is public and is live, they are going to go ahead and try and start expanding this throughout the rest of the states at first and then into other countries. We'll see where they go with this. Yeah, what Carbon says here, sometimes you're not in the mood. Sometimes you're having a depressive cycle. You still need groceries, right? You still need food. So we'll see what happens. I'm going to be kind of keeping an idle eye on this. As I mentioned, I have, actually my aunt lives up there. One of my aunts, not the nurse aunt. This is the Microsoft aunt. Lives up in that area. And I'm going to ask her to go check this out because I'm honestly curious. And we'll see what goes up on this. Anyways. Probably about another half an hour. Demanche. Which I just butchered that pronunciation. I'm sorry. Actually, I don't do public transportation for the most part. Actually, that's not true. When I went to Dragon Con last year, I literally had to take a train in order to get in there because it was in downtown Atlanta. And you're right. Nobody talked to each other on the train. That was actually a weird experience to me. I know that sounds strange, but then again, the last time I went on a train was many, many years ago, and everyone was like, hey, how's it going? You know. And of course, back when I used to live in San Francisco, this would have been back in the 90s, by the way, everyone was chatty. You know, on the, I can't remember the name of it, the San Francisco Public Transport. I forget what the name of the system is, but the San Fran whatever. Everyone was chatting like, hey, what's going on? Oh, God, I know. I really wish this fog would clear up, but, you know, it's San Francisco, what do you do, right? And everyone would just chat and talk, and it was a nice environment. And then it was just shocking to you know, move forward about 20 years. All of a sudden, nobody's talking to each other. Anyways, sorry, just random discussion there. So what am I talking about next? Stellaris. We're talking about Stellaris next. The BART! That's it. Thank you. That is exactly what it is. The BART. The Bay Area Transit. There we go. So let's talk about Stellaris. Stellaris sucks and it's the worst game ever. No, I'm sure hazardous. I'll look into it later. So Stellaris is coming out with a new expansion February 22nd, I want to say. It's relatively soon. And it's called Apocalypse. I shouldn't do that. I'm still not completely better. And this new expansion, by all accounts, is going to be adding and changing a lot about the game. And that's funny, because I actually, I kind of suck at Stellaris. I haven't played Stellaris since the last time I streamed it, which at this point was months upon months ago. In fact, for some of you may remember, I tried streaming a Star Trek Stellaris a few days ago when STO was up, and I actually found myself lost because I'm like, oh god, I don't remember where everything is. I don't remember how to do anything. Like, I was like, how do I look at my planets? Oh god, I don't remember how to look at my planets. I'm completely fallen off the bike on that game. Because I just haven't had time to play it. It turns out to be a good thing. They're changing a lot of things. Changing out how Unity works. Changing how space combat works, changing how space travel works, changing how planetary invasion works, changing how edicts work. I mean, they're changing all sorts of stuff. But more to the point, what I really want to talk about with regards to the apocalypse thing is something I've seen in several streams by... what are you linking me? So let's talk about Stellaris. Stellaris Sultan is the worst game ever. What the hell, Carbon? I like how you chopped it off before I could take that back. But yeah, so several devs in several streams have all said, we want more story in Stellaris. Now, I mentioned that because that's awesome. Now, I've discussed story in games so many times, I don't want to go completely repeating myself. Let me just summarize it down to one sentence. I think every type of game could, not should, but could include story elements, and it would be a good thing if they did so. My opinion. Thank you, Hazardous. Now, we know of basically one major 4X game that really had a strong story focus, and it's an oldie. It's Alpha Centauri. Some of the Endless games have had a reasonable amount of story focus, and Galciv tried to have a story focus because it actually had a campaign mode, and then that just kind of flopped. I don't know if Galciv 3 is any better about that, but Galciv 2 story mode was just kind of eh. But Alpha Centauri had a pretty strong story focus. Endless Legends has tried, pushing into the story elements. So it's not like we can't see 4X games having story. We've seen it, it's been done, and it's awesome. So I'm fully in favor of this idea. It's also been mentioned a few times that I just got a new patron, which is kind of awesome. It's also been mentioned several times that Fallen Enchantress... that's actually true. Fallen Enchantress did have a decent story mode. So I'll give you that one. I actually forgot about that game. I only played that game once for the show, and then I never got a chance to actually finish it. But yeah, no, as Carbon is pointing out, this is not new. The idea of trying to push more story into their grand strategy games has been going around for years now. But they've been having significant issues in Crusader Kings and in EU4. Not just because of the engine, but because of the historical tint. Stellaris doesn't have to chain itself to real history, and Stellaris doesn't have to try and be limited by an old and terrible engine. I'm sorry, I love EU4, but whew. So I'm loving this idea of trying to actually tell more storytelling stuff. Now, I bring this up because for those of you who didn't pay attention, hey, Magister, Stellaris' Apocalypse expansion actually has what I could only call a story trailer, which tells the story of this woman who leaves her child back on Earth, specifically Earth, by the way. And they all talk about, and they name drop a few things. They do some very basic low-level setting building, but in a way that usually isn't done in a game like this. Talking about the United, I forget the actual terms, the United Planet, we swear to uphold the liberty of free people, we swear to fight these people, blah, blah, blah. And in the end, spoiler alert, they destroy the planet Earth. Bam! And everyone dies. I have to admit, I have to be completely honest, I wasn't emotionally ready for that. When I saw that trailer, that was just a gut punch from hell. Whew. Yeah. But I'm really hoping that this is a push in this direction. Now, I gotta say this because this is... Oh, well, then I don't know what you're talking about, Carbon. Sorry. Never mind. Apparently it wasn't Earth, it was a colony. I'll have to take Taitu's word on it, because so apparently Earth doesn't get destroyed. It's okay, guys. Just the kid and everyone else living on the colony. Where do you get that from, actually, Taitu? I'm honestly curious. I've lost my train of thought. I really hope that we're going to see more story elements, more story concepts, more story arcs, quest arcs. In Stellaris, we already have what is effectively a quest arc. with regards to the worm. We already have a quest arc with regards to the sphere, the giant super engine, right? So they're already kind of pushing little bits and pieces into this direction. And this is actually funny because if you sat me down a few years ago and said, how would you introduce more story into a 4X game? That's exactly how I do it. What I want to do is I want to build multiple quest arcs or story arcs or events arcs, whatever you want to call it, and then have each of them kind of have a chance to happen here or under this circumstance or in this kind of planet or in this kind of terrain or whatever. And that way, in any given playthrough, you have a chance to, you know, basically bungle into one of these actual story moments. And I think that's an awesome concept. In fact, for those of you who remember, when we were actually playing Stellaris multiplayer, we actually had a mod. One of the mods we voted in for the Stellaris multiplayer was a mod that adds a whole lot more events that we could encounter, and more just little story moments that we can encounter, which is cool. Yeah. And yes, it will obviously cross over with Marvel Comics. I don't actually have much else to say about this. I would like to know, do you want me to put Stellaris on the on the premiere run list, basically, and do what is effectively a premiere run of the new Stellaris Apocalypse? I guess that's my basic question to you. No, I guess that's right. That doesn't. I mean, that looks a lot like Earth if the continents were moved around a bit. And of course, if we did that, the option of multiplayer is on the table. I'll go ahead and admit that. But we'd be doing no mod multiplayer. I'd buy Apocalypse, and then I'd host it, and you all would have access to Apocalypse, because that's how Paradox works. As much as Paradox does things that drives me crazy, I still applaud that one decision. So while we're talking about that, let me go ahead and update this. It would also be a great excuse for me to be able to play Stellaris. I know that sounds weird. Oh, it grayed out. It just did it. Maybe it's only doing it when I'm editing the scene? Because it only did it when I was editing the scene. That's strange. What's the next topic? Ah, yes, Dragon Age. Well, see, I don't disagree with that concept, Carbon, but I'm not going to stop doing premiere runs just because we're doing so many lore runs. Although there is a reason I'm going to immediately start working on the Elder Scrolls lore run today. But anyways, how many players can be in Stellaris? 20, I think? It's a lot. Right, let me get a timestamp. God, I'm tired. Let's talk about inflation. Now, what extra credits video? Let's talk about inflation. I've noticed several times, and this actually came up recently because EA and EA both kind of decided to talk about just how expensive it is to make games these days. What are you guys talking about with extra credits? Oh, apparently extra credits already covered this. Whatever. I'm going to assume they did it for the same reason I'm doing it, because this came up recently. Because, so, okay. God, this is actually a complicated topic. Let's start with inflation. Let's just start with inflation. Inflation is a real concept that actually does happen and actually does affect people. Inflation is a very complex, convoluted, and frankly unnecessary aspect of society. In fact, it is actually, and I say this with total 100% certainty, it is actually possible to prevent inflation, at least here in the States. I don't know how other countries work. But there are methods that the governments of both the states and the federal side could actually do here in the States to prevent inflation from happening at all. That is a functional possibility. Now, I mention this because we all just kind of accept inflation as a thing because of why inflation used to happen. For those of you not aware, inflation used to happen because inflation was a more literal thing. Let me explain what I mean by that. Once upon a time, people would trade in silver. People would trade in gold or cattle or whatever, right? Well, let's say, let me use a direct example. Let's say you're Spain, or Castile, I suppose I should say. You're Castile, and you've just sent out treasure fleets. And those treasure fleets come back from the New World filled to the brim with gold. Well, now you have more gold. Bam! Inflation. It really is that simple. I have nothing else to add to that, because that is why inflation exists. That right there. It is only because of the fact that when economies were based on a physical commodity, the variance of the amount of that commodity in the economy changed the value of its relative worth. This is just such a duh that I don't even think this is worth talking about. Now, for those of you not aware, we're not on the gold standard anymore. We haven't been for about 40 years now. Excuse me, I guess it's more like 60 years now, sorry. We are not on the gold standard. We're not on the anything standard, actually. There's a relatively complex thing that keeps track of how money is related to how other money, right? But that's it. So, the actual physical, logical reason for inflation to exist doesn't anymore. Yeah, it's actually quite recently. It was actually during Richard Nixon. Richard Nixon was the president who pushed us in the U.S. off the gold standard. Just... so that's how recent. It was the 70s, I want to say. So yeah. Now, I'm not going to get into all the specifics of this because this is actually a ludicrously complicated topic. It's the kind of thing that I have to sit down and I would probably, like, you know, put a paint window on the screen and start sketching it off because holy crap, there's so much crap here. Basically, yes, and also no, hazardous. There's a lot of messed up things, but long story short, let me just sit down and give my honest professional opinion as someone who has studied economics for the last 30 years. There is no reason for inflation to exist now. Okay, I'm just going to lay that down there. There is no functional reason, no reliable purpose, no feasible reality in which inflation should be allowed to continue to exist. Now, now let me clarify that statement a little bit. That's for an economy that is fully that's the wrong word. That is fully self-cohesive. In other words, a functioning economy. In other words, the United States should not have inflation. Britain should not have inflation. Canada should not have inflation. Now, sometimes inflation could still happen because of a runaway economy. That is the kind of thing that can and does still happen, even in the modern era, because it is still possible to mismanage. But if you're listening to me, only mismanagement should lead to inflation. Now, if you don't understand why I keep making this point, let me say something else. For those of you not aware, inflation is artificial. Again, okay, I got to talk specifically from the States, because I know the economy of the States better than I do other countries. Inflation here is artificially driven. In other words, inflation in the United States would not exist except for certain aspects of our own economic cycle, of our taxation rates, and of the method by which we cycle money through the banks and the Federal Reserve. We make inflation happen here in the States. We push it forward. This is why I say there's no reason for inflation to exist, because, Now that I've got all that out of the way, now let's talk about the great fallacy of inflation. Now, obviously, inflation is the kind of thing that does affect things on a large scale. When I was living in California, I had a two-story apartment. Mom had a two-story apartment, and This two-story apartment was in a nice neighborhood in a city, and that two-story apartment was $800 a month. Now, this was back in '89 or something like that. Nowadays, if I right now wanted to go get a nice one-bedroom apartment with one bathroom, it would cost me about $800. Now, that varies based on location and whatnot, but you can kind of see how this causes issues and questions and problems. So inflation does actually exist and can actually affect things, but most people seem to think that there's basically some magic inflation thing that's just happening. Let me explain what I mean by that. Some people automatically assume, and this bothers the crap out of me when people do this, this is one of those pet peeve things, that last year, or 2 years ago, or 3 years ago, insert commodity A, or insert service A, or insert income A cost X. Therefore, it's 3 years later, so adjusted for inflation. How many times have you heard that phrase? Adjusted for inflation, this now should cost X plus Y. And a huge number of people automatically just assume that inflation is an automatic linear thing that everyone should accommodate for. I'm going to get into something a little bit more real here. For those of you who are still working at the same jobs you have, how many of you make an equivalent amount more money than you used to, adjusted for inflation? Honest question. You can probably already see where I'm going with this. Because inflation is a grand scale concept. For the most part, especially on a year-to-year basis, it does not affect the individual. There's actually something that was in concept back in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, and then it kind of dropped off. And some companies still do this, but it's no longer standard, where they had something called a cost of living increase, a cost of living raise. And that raise was literally a raise to make sure that you, the employees, kept up with inflation, and nothing else. That was its purpose. Nowadays, that doesn't really tend to happen. Now, some companies still do that. I'll give you a personal experience. When I worked for 9 years, 8 years, almost a decade at the network place I worked at, and my wages went up over that 9 years or 8 years or however long it was by $1 an hour. In fact, why don't I make my point mathematically? Give me a second. So that would have been this year I got that job. And this year I lost that job. So mathematically speaking, I should have gotten... Oh, actually, let's do it this way. That's even better. Mathematically speaking, in order to keep up for inflation, I should have received a raise increase across that period of time of $5.22. My point is, there's actually a whole lot of mess I could really talk about here. Because this is actually a ludicrously complicated topic, which is actually kind of my point. My point is that too many people seem to look at inflation and use it as a magic excuse for the price of things. To automatically assume that prices go up. To automatically assume that things are more expensive. When, in my real-life experience, not just for myself, but for my mother, for my sister, for my aunt, for my uncles, for basically everyone I know, for the most part, people don't actually get the increase in cost equivalent to what the government or the calculators say is the increase of prices of things for inflation. In reality land, well, let's bring this back down to gaming, because this is all prompted by EA. They made this comment about, this is actually a little bit ago. I mean, they made this comment about the price of games and blah, 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 and how it's, and there was a pundit on, I want to say it was the Wall Street Journal, where he was talking about how games should be, this is actually the same guy who was talking about the bull crap with the net neutrality thing recently, that games should be costing significantly more money now. This is probably what prompted extra credits as well. Games should cost so much more money now because of the fact that inflation, like that was basically his argument. Inflation equals games should cost more. And what's funny is he also made the argument that gaming is now cheaper than it has been in a long time, and that is actually true. Like, that is legitimately true. I don't know how many of you remember when going out and buying a SNES game cost $90 new, but I do. I can actually name a specific game I bought that was $90 Earthbound. When I got Chrono Trigger for the first time, that was $70. Now, this was back in the 90s and O's when there wasn't a, you know, the $60 standard didn't exist. But my point is, this has always been something. You know, gaming has always been a relatively expensive thing. Nowadays, it is relatively cheaper than it has been for a long time. But the problem is, first of all, everything I've seen about the data of the price of games doesn't really back up that argument. Lol, Micromono. See, if you actually look into the data, and you have to go frickin' digging for it, by the way, but if you actually go into the really boring notes and minutes of the actual meetings that they have, the public meetings that EA has, or Warner Brothers has, or Ubisoft has, about the actual cost and how much money they've actually spent, while they do spend a decent amount of money, and they do spend more money than they used to on games, it's not, they want you to think it's this. In truth, it's a little bit more like this. This is about how much gaming has increased in price. The only exceptions on that are things... Yeah, no kidding, Hazardous. The only exception to that is for certain games that are heavily mismanaged. Cough, cough, Destiny. Or GTA 5. Although, ironically, GTA 5 also got all that money back, so whatever. Yeah, the graphics arms race didn't help any of this at all. Now, the problem is, I'm trying to say one thing, and oh yeah, Tor is another good example. I'm trying to say one thing and the other thing at the same time, so let me just try to say this as simply as I can. The argument that because inflation, games should be more expensive, is basically wrong. I would like to think I've at least moderately proven that, but the simplest way to put it is, you aren't spending that much more money on the expense of it, and we aren't making that much more money to pay for it. Now, yes, the gaming market has expanded extensively, but one of the other things, I'm sorry to rant on this because this has pissed me off, one of the other things that I've heard recently is that, well, because the gaming market, the number of people who are into video gaming nowadays is so huge, we should increase prices. Now, that's incredibly stupid, because of that increased market, how many of those people do you think make more money than the average gamer? You know, we rewind 10 years, and that increased market, how many of those people make more money to be able to afford the new, you know, the price increase, the price hike? Actually, the funny thing is, with the current increase in gaming market, gaming should probably lower in price because it's a larger market. Because there's more people who make half of the money, or less than the money, or whatever. Duh! Now, the funny thing is, if you pay... Now, I've heard... This is another thing I've heard a lot lately, is gaming's dying. That's a load of crap. If you pay attention to the price of games, well, obviously certain aspects... Yeah, no kidding, Lurker. Certain aspects of gaming are still at the $60 or plus range, or the $90 range, or the $110 range, or however much money they want to bilk out of you. But have you noticed how many games are below the $60 range in the last couple of years? We've had more and more, not just of indie games, but of the middle games, whatever we're going to call that, the middle tier games, you know, the AA games, which are below $60. I would say very definitively, like this is still speculation, but I would say with a fairly strong certainty that one of the reasons the gaming market has continued to expand is because of those AA games and those indie games that are below the $60 mine. How many... I just had a conversation yesterday with a friend of mine about Assassin's Creed Origins, which I think is a really good game. And you know what he said? Yeah, I'll probably pick it up when it goes on sale. Because that's just automatic for so many people nowadays, because we have other things that we have to pay for. Because it's expensive to live, because we don't have some magic amount of inflated, increased income. So we have to very carefully choose what we purchase. Right? I mean, duh! I imagine every single one of you has to think very carefully about every video game purchase you have. Except for Gary, he just buys whatever. But every single one of you, except for him, have to very carefully decide what you're going to buy, when and where and how. I have to do that, and you guys pay for my games. So, games should not be more expensive than $60. And I really hate to bring this up yet again, because I've been saying this for years, and the more that I see about life, the more this is true. But this all goes back down to the problem of the quarterly market. I know you guys have heard me talk about that again. I'm not going to go all over it again. But I would say with high certainty, that the biggest problem, the biggest thing pushing this, we need to nickel and dime customers, we need to push out DLCs, we need to push out microtransactions, we need to push out loot boxes, we need to push out season passes, you know. The new thing, the targeted marketing thing that they've been talking about, which is still in the realm of rumor. We don't know if it's actually true. But several people have reported on this, you know, the whole targeted marketing thing they're going to try doing is not because it's more expensive to produce the games, and it's not because the companies are losing money. It's because the investment requires an increasing profit. For those of you who haven't heard me talk about this again, I can say this very briefly. The concept of the quarterly return is if you make X money in one quarter, you need to make X plus 1 in the second, X plus 2 in the third, and so on forever. In other words, every economic quarter, it is demanded by the current system, and this actually ties into the inflation thing, that you don't just make money, but that you make more money than you already have. And it's stupid. And it is, in my honest opinion, one of the biggest problems facing the entire planet. And I say that without hyperbole, because it's a mess. It's one of the reasons why companies fall apart over the years. Because after a certain point, that bubble does burst. Speaking of which... let's talk about Dragon Age. Yeah, no kidding, Carbon. Ugh. And for those of you who are jokingly saying, well, it's infinite, that can't be sustainable, you have to understand that that is actually literal, that this is not a Dilbert cartoon. This is not some joke. This is actually, legitimately, what economic analysts, who aren't me, and investors and investment firms and stock market analysts and all those people push for all the time. So let's talk about Dragon Age. Let's go to a slightly less depressing topic. So, I made the comment, I'm pretty sure it was 2 weeks ago, but it was 1 week or 2 weeks ago, that the odds of a Dragon Age game being under development are low. Now, what's interesting is they made a few announcements over the last week saying, no, we're definitely working on the new Dragon Age. We're also working on Anthem. Wait, what? Several people who have stated that they actually are okay with, you know, who are actually working on Dragon Age and are pushing Dragon Age, are actually simultaneously working on Love Disney over there. And that Love Disney has also been pushed back to next year in terms of its development cycle. There's, yeah, the whole we're primarily working on Anthem thing, but we're totally working on Dragon Age, we swear. God, please, we swear. There is no next topic. This is the last topic. We swear we're working on Dragon Age. This is why I made my half-joking comment earlier that I'm not 100% sure they actually are working on Dragon Age. Like, let me put it to you this way. There's working on a product, which is where, okay, we need to design this, and we need to make this happen here, and we need to have meetings to do the writing of this. And then there's working on a project. Now, in fairness, this is legitimate work, but there's a difference between prep work. You know, okay, let's see. We gotta. Anyone have any ideas for this, such and such? You know, let's sketch this out. That's prep work. And then there's work. I would put money down right now that they're doing prep work on Dragon Age, and they're doing work on Anthem. But in addition to all this, there's a couple other things related to this that I want to mention. First of all, oh, haha, Anthony. First of all, we've got to talk about Anthem itself, just really quick, because they're really pushing Anthem lately. I don't know if you've noticed this. I'm pretty certain that certain people have basically been told Anthem better sell or it's your job. Now, I have no specific proof of that fact, other than the fact that there's been a lot of marketing buzz being generated solely around Anthem, that a lot of people have been specifically stating about how they really want to push Anthem, and that we do know that basically everyone under the BioWare label working at EA is now working on Anthem. We'll see what happens as a result of that. But here's the problem. Yeah, Taito makes a very good comparison there. Because for those of you who don't remember, they had actually announced Cyberpunk 2077 before Witcher 3 came out. Like, a lot of people tend to forget that little fact. Anthem, well, here's what Anthem is. It's a video game. It's probably going to have online elements. Might have a campaign. We don't actually know. In fact, we know virtually nothing about Anthem. It's probably a shooter. It looks like it's using the Andromeda combat engine. Yeah, basically, it very much looks like, again, this is speculation, but I'd put money down. It's speculation that Anthem is going to be the succeed or you're gone thing for the people still working under the BioWare label. And I keep calling it that because it's not BioWare. It hasn't been BioWare for a long time. But let's talk about Dragon Age. Because, statistically speaking, and you know what? I hope I'm wrong. Let me just make that clear. I don't like predicting gloom and being right. In fact, I want the opposite of that. I want things to be awesome. It's really refreshing for me when something turns out to be awesome instead of terrible. You know, that's awesome every time that happens. I suppose I'm repeating myself, but you know, right? I hope Anthem is a great success. However, statistically speaking, Anthem will probably not be a sufficient extent of success. Quarterly product. You know, it's the whole quarterly return mentality all over again. And that means there's actually a pretty good chance we'll never get another Dragon Age. Because any prep work they're doing on Dragon Age right now will not be sufficient to be financially feasible for a defunct studio to go ahead and then produce into an actual game. And they will probably just eject whatever prep work they've done on the story and the concept art and whatever, and then throw it out the window in order to make something else with the Dragon Age name on it. Oh yeah, that's another thing. Let's talk. I haven't even mentioned the live elements thing. Oh crap, you're right. It'll be fine. Anybody could use a little rain. So, the live elements thing is yet another part of this. Let's talk about word choice. If I tell you... Oh god, you know what? I should have prepared an example for this. You joke, Taito. Actually, you're probably not joking. If I were to say, you know what, let me just use the actual example. Let me just use the actual example Dragon Age did. Paraphrased. We're going to release the new. We're designing the new Dragon Age from the ground up to include to be done with the mentality of having live elements. What does that mean to you? Based on my word choice? Yeah, no kidding, Hazardous. I'm asking honestly. I know what it means to me. Because to me, live elements means it's going to be a service game. It's going to be a multiplayer focused. It's going to be it's going to be a service game. It's going to be the kind of game that's designed to keep the player playing the game and keep the player buying the game and turn your players into payers. That's exactly what that means to me. You know, loot boxes, multiplayer, daily boards, online quests, PvP probably, you know, that kind of a thing. MMOE. We're kind of past the era of MMOs technically in terms of gaming, but that's why I call it MMOE. That's what I think of when I hear live elements. Now, what I find funny about this is the developer then went back and said, no, that's not what I meant, that's not what I meant. Oh god, no. What I actually meant was that it will continue to have an updating story, a live story. Now, I could buy that guy might be an idiot, but when you phrase your announcement in a very specific way, I mean, let's just rewind time a second here. How hard would it be to say, we're designing Dragon Age 4 to have an ongoing story? How much harder is that to say than to have live elements? It's also worth noting that EA is really pushing the whole service games thing. EA rather famously said that single-player games are dying and that nobody actually wants to play single-player games. A month ago now? 2 months ago? It's not been super long. They said that. For those who didn't catch that, EA actually said, nobody wants single-player games. Nobody buys single-player games. I'm sorry. I literally can't say that without laughing. It was before the Game Awards. Okay, so, yeah. It has not been long. A little over a month. Yeah, what's funny is several other developers have actually been, or excuse me, not developers, wrong term. Executives have been saying the whole single player is dead thing for the last decade. Yeah, nobody bought Subnautica. Nobody buys Stardew Valley. What else has come out recently? I could point to like 20 games that came out in the last few weeks if I actually sat down and looked at a list. Oh, yep, nope, that didn't sell. Nobody wanted to buy that. Oh yeah, Divinity Original Sin 2. Anyone remember that game? That game was freaking amazing. Nobody would buy that. That's ridiculous. Breath of the Wild, that just came out last year. Odyssey came out a couple months ago, which has actually exploded in sales. Gary, I like Gary's comment here. So my reason for pointing this out is that based on what we know, and again, this is all massively the realm of speculation. Let's make that clear. Maybe Anthem won't be a disaster. Maybe Dragon Age 4 will actually happen and it'll be good. That would be great. I'd love that. I love Dragon Age. I liked Inquisition. I liked Dragon Age 2. Massively flawed game though it is, I still call DA2 a net positive. Even to this day. And I mean that with total sincerity. I would love for Dragon Age 4 to come out and be good. I would love for Anthem to come out and be good enough. Maybe even good enough for me to try, I don't know. We can do a premiere run of it. That's kind of your guys' decision, not mine. But, you know, that'd be awesome. But realistically speaking, when you have developers coming out with comments like, Dragon Age 4 is going to include live elements, and a massive overturn of work that's being done on Anthem, which is a service game, and people flat out admitting, yeah, we're working on Dragon Age 4, but actually, no, we're primarily working on Anthem. This is painting a very blatant, very obvious, and very clear picture. And it's not a good one. So the good news, because there is good news, is that, and I talked about this recently, we're basically in the era of the spiritual successor. We might actually have a new Mass Effect game someday that's great. It won't be called Mass Effect, and it won't be set, with Asari and Turians, but it'll be good. It'll be made by the people who made Mass Effect, and it'll probably be good. We might someday get a good Dragon Age game. It won't be called Dragon Age. By the way, when we get closer to an actual release of Anthem, I will be asking you guys if you want me to do a premiere run of it. Right now, we know so little about the game, I'm not even prepared to put that out as a choice right now. Because we know so little about Anthem, it's actually kind of silly. We know more about a game that's coming out this December, Battletech, than we know about Anthem, which was supposed to come out earlier this year. Obviously, it's been pushed back, but, We'll talk about it later. We'll talk about it later when we have more details. I do have one last announcement before we switch over to the Elder Scrolls stream. I'm going to chop off the voting for the 2018. God, I can't think straight. I'm sorry. I actually feel dizzy. We're going to be chopping off the 2018 Floodgates voting next Sunday. Okay, that's the chop off point. So anybody who hasn't voted yet, anybody who hasn't, any patrons who have not yet weighed in on what you want ruminated on for the coming year, please go ahead and take the time to do so now. I haven't actually gotten a vote in a week, and I'm only giving this announcement now and giving you another week because I like to make sure everyone has lots and lots of time to go ahead and get in there. So, FYI. Now I'm going to chop off the local recording.